Never trust an elf!
Good day everyone, Fury here, and today we're going to do a humans only challenge run. So let's get right into the rules.
It's about time.
Number 1, as the name implies, this is a human only run. Number 2, towers can only be used defensively or for the purposes of capturing objectives that require a ranged attack. Number 3, the game is played on the hardest difficulty, also would not be much of a challenge otherwise. And lastly, time units are considered as units for this run. The first mission is pretty standard for an RTS game. They're really just testing that you can drag all your units around from one end of the map to the other. So, in this time we will discuss a little bit about what makes Warcraft 3 unique compared to other RTS games. Not only do you have to control a whole army, but you also have to control a hero who you will be leveling up through the campaign. The hero of this campaign is Arthas Menethil, who is a paladin who specializes in keeping his troops alive. Now, to speed through this level, as it is not much different from a regular playthrough, what we do is we save Little Timmy from the evil bandits, we go and do some very aggressive accounting policies and get a ledger back from bandits, and lastly we go and deal with the orc raiding party. Black Rock and Roll is a substantially more interesting mission than the first one, as you now get to build a base as well as command an army at the same time. So the bonus objective of this map provides the first real challenge to overcome in this run. At the end of this cave is a dragon you have to fight, and as you all know, dragons can fly, and swords cannot hit flying targets. So we have a problem where we can't directly fight this creature. I came up with a brilliant idea to deal with him and hopefully get rid of him for good. I decided to build a whole relay of towers behind his nest, and I hoped that they would be able to shoot into the nest and kill the dragon. However, this idea went horribly wrong because they confused the dragon to no ends and he just started to fly all around his cave and doing who knows what. So I had to build a second relay of towers, and only with that second relay was I finally able to take the dragon down. The reason why it was so important to defeat this dragon is that it drops the Orb of Fire, a very powerful item that adds damage to Arthas, splash to his attacks, and most importantly allows him to hit air units, which are going to be one of the biggest weaknesses of our army in this run. With the dragon slain, we could fully set our eyes and attention onto the orcs and their raiding forces. After dealing with a few raiding parties, we built up a sufficient amount of footmen and we went to attack the Blade Master. Now, for anyone who's never played this campaign before, the Blade Master is for some unknown reason a stupidly high level, and he has access to his ultimate ability. So the second you get close, let's just say your footmen are being put into a meat grinder. I sent in a few of my men to make the Blade Master angry enough that he would start to spin, and then I used the secret art of running away to make sure everyone could get out to tell the tale. Jaina's meeting is another level that is focused purely on moving your army around, but this time it comes with the addition of more complex armies and a second hero to work with, which is normally a very cool thing. However, because of the way the human faction is, we have 2 troops in total, one of which we only get a bit later in the campaign. So realistically, we are still running with footmen, Arthas and Jaina. Now, the fun thing about Jaina is where most of her power lies is in the ability to summon Water Elemental, which we cannot use, so that means less tanking, less damage output, and less of a fun time for us and more of a fun time for our enemy. The first half of the mission is pretty relaxed. You deal with a few more bandits, notice the bridge is knocked down, so you take a side route and fight through some horrible fishy creatures known as Murlocs. And if you have played World of Warcraft in your life, you will know just how blood-curdling and terrifying the scream for Murloc is. After braving the Murlocs, you will come across 3 heroic swordsmen who are facing down a whole horde of skeleton archers. All they are armed with is the shield block ability, which greatly reduces the damage they take from the arrows of the archers. However, it also slows them down, which makes them take longer to get to the archers, which is not that good as it kind of defeats the point of what this ability is trying to achieve. But anyways, back to what we are doing here. We have to keep every single one of these soldiers alive, because we are not getting any more reinforcements past this point, as the rest are all the scum that we do not want to be associating with. Elves and dwarves. A little bit further down the path we come across another big challenge, where we have to face necromancers and their horde of skeletons. What makes this part tricky is the relatively high damage intake you'll receive, as there's a lot of ranged units slowly funneling their damage on your footmen, while there are melee skeletons who do not care about your shield block at all. So what I chose to do is take Arthas to snipe the necromancers to minimize the damage intake as quick as possible before I start losing troops. On our adventure we came across 2 jolly elves which we sent to go and frolic in the forest, and they were never seen again unfortunately. The rest of the mission is pretty relaxed, as all you have to fight are low level skeletons. And after those skeletons you fight the mighty abomination, which falls over really pathetically to just a few footmen because I kept them all alive. Up until this mission called the Cult of the Damned, I had so far accidentally completed the run deathless. However, that was soon to change with this one due to my incompetence as a commander, and I feel like I should have retired after this. Luckily the troops decided to keep me as their commander for the future campaigns. I thought I would act fast and send Arthas to the east to get some experience while nothing is happening in the early game. However, a very threatening wave of undead came and attacked the base, and I was not prepared for this, so I desperately microed my troops. I even made my peasants pick up weapons and fight as well, and I just held it off, and I even held it off fairly well, surprisingly. So, this was a good lesson learned. I should not leave my base unattended with literally nothing defending it again. And to make sure that wouldn't happen again, I built up a very formidable formation of towers and farms to hold any attack that dared to make any attempt on my base. When I finally built up a force that I thought was big enough, I decided to be a bit courageous and assault the enemy undead base. And my false bravado was soon shattered with how many poor footmen died. I used the most genius tactic, and it did work. I call it human wave tactics. I sent man after man to their deaths to just slowly make a hole in the space. And I mean, it did work. You can't fault me for my methods if they do work at the end of the day. After this point, the mission is effectively over. However, I was fearing what was coming next. So what I ended up doing was parking both Jaina and Arthas at the 2 different shops around the map. And I was just slowly grinding up time and gold to buy all the scrolls and potions that I could, because I knew the next mission was going to be a very frightening one, as I remember it being one of the most challenging missions in the whole human campaign. I would just like to say, take a mental note now that I bought some Wands of Negation thinking that they would prove useful. This is going to prove relevant later on, and it took a painfully long time to get all of these supplies. To finish the mission, I charged in with Arthas using his safety bubble, and I was able to snipe Cultizard with some holy light. March of the Scourge is a mission I've been worrying about a lot. The goal of it is to survive for 30 minutes, while defending your base against ever-increasing undead attacks. This mission does not waste time. As soon as you spawn in, you are assaulted by villagers who have turned into zombies. After clearing them out, the first thing you'll do is build up your defenses around the base. The 2 main areas the undead attack from are the northwest and the southwest, Those are going to be the main places where we will be setting up our tower formations. The first few attacks are not that oppressive. They're mostly there to give you a sweet, gentle reminder to build up your towers, build up your defenses, and increase the size of your army. The challenge was going smoothly. However, a problem emerges around the 22-minute mark. A caravan spawns in at the far end of the map, and that caravan will go around the whole map, turning more and more villagers into the undead, and if you do not do something to stop it in a good period of time, you will get overrun. So, to get to said caravan and stop it, the easiest route is to go directly north. However, there is an issue with this method. Normally you would have a mixed army with sufficient siege equipment to get through the towers. However, footmen are not particularly strong at fighting towers. And what happens is you spend an awful amount of time attacking them. And as soon as you do that, the nearby undead base's army will come and counterattack you. And they hurt because they attack with a high level lich. The problem is their powerful ice magic, which can easily nuke down my footmen with area of effect damage, and they have a slowing aura that ruins the attack potential of all of my footmen. It goes without saying, but we cannot fight them directly as of right now, so we're going to have to be a little bit creative. If we cannot fight them directly, then our next best option is to do some hit and run tactics. So that is exactly what I do. I go in, I destroy a tower, run out, fight the smaller army that fought me, and then I repeat the process by destroying the second tower. The next big threat was the caravan itself. So it is guarded by meat wagons, abominations, and necromancers. And these abominations have the disease cloud upgrade on them now. So what happens is, as soon as a footman touches them, they are going to take constant plague damage, which will slowly but surely whittle down their health to nothing. And the caravans are good at just doing high area of effect damage to the footmen. The fight itself did not go well. I thought it was a sufficient number, but I realized halfway through the fight that I would not be able to win it fair and square. So I decided I would use Arthas to snipe down every single one of the caravans and pick up the item that they dropped. It technically got me the quest complete. I was able to get Arthas out and a few of the remaining footmen, but I was not happy with the way this engagement went. The mission carried on in a very similar manner to how it did before. I would hold out against undead attacks, while slowly upgrading myself to be more and more sufficient at defending. I tried to capture the base up north, but it was attacked shortly after completion, and I thought I would just give up on that idea and rely on a single base of gold income. If you remember in the previous mission, I spent an awful amount of time waiting by the shops to buy a few wands of negation. Well, I decided to use them to clear out the disease cloud effect. And would you look at that? It didn't work. I wasted all of that time for nothing, and I still hate myself over this. At the 2-minute mark, the final army was arriving. A full force of liches, abominations, necromancers, and countless undead. And would you look at that, I may have killed them all before the timer ended. Yeah, that was a very anticlimactic end after how intense this mission was. Regardless of the ending, I still think this was one of the most fun missions of the entire run. At last, we finally have a new unit to play with. We have the Mighty Knight unit. This is essentially a beefed up footman. More health, more armor, more damage, and more movement speed. They are basically going to be the main army unit for the rest of the run. This mission is different from the original game, so there's a few things I really dislike and a few things I really like about it, but I'm sure no one wants to listen to me rant about this for an hour straight, so rather let's get on with the challenge and look at the strategy involved. Missions like these Early pressure can make a wonderful difference to making it a smooth clear, so I instantly set out with Arthas and the current army to break down the doors of a few houses and peacefully evict the citizens from it. So peacefully, in fact, that we slaughtered them in their sleep so they wouldn't even have to feel any pain. We really were kind when we were doing this. Shortly after setting foot in the city, Morgana spawns in, and he decides to do the same thing as us. However, he does it with a very, very powerful army. Quite frankly, they are way too difficult to engage head-on with the current setup and the limitations of the challenge. Instead, we are going to have to work on hit-and-run tactics so we can get in, destroy a few buildings and get out. Rinse and repeat. Once in a while, an undead attack would hit the base, so I would normally hold it off using a combination of my arrow towers, janky micro, and whatever knights were being recruited and stockpiled in the base to hopefully repel the wave. After being caught out and taking a bad fight with Morganus, I decided I would have to split my army into two. Arthas would go the one way and my remaining knights the other. The idea is that hopefully they would be able to clear out one of the houses they went to, and just constantly drag Morganus around no matter which army he decides to focus on. I would say the strategy was working, but realistically I was starting to put out fires everywhere. I basically had no army in the city, my home base was getting close to destroyed. It really was quite a tight one. I feel like if I were to play this again I could do much better. But for now it's fine, because a clear is a clear. We are finally bringing the fight to the shores of Northrend. After getting rid of a stowaway on our ship, we proceeded to the place where we would make our base camp, but along the way we had to fight several random enemies. Overall it was not too difficult, but it was substantially slower without a dedicated healing unit. This part of the campaign normally teaches you the importance of having units that can deal with air units, and today we're going to learn how to do this when the majority of our army cannot fire upwards. Our main defensive option was having many arrow towers. They were not particularly great at dealing with the regular undead, but they were perfect for dealing with the gargoyles that were flying at us. Our other effective tool was the Orb of Fire we got Arthas in the second mission, as it allows him to attack upwards and hit the pesky gargoyles. In a standard playthrough of this mission, there is a very easy way to get the gold base north of our current one. You would simply take Arthas, run him up using Divine Shield, and claiming it for yourself. However, because that base is full of Dwarven and Gnome units, we cannot actually take it right away. If we did, they would immediately start attacking the nearby undead, and I feel that would be against the spirit of the challenge, because now we have gotten the non-humans involved in our own fights. So instead, I first had to break through that base entirely before I could capture the gold base. We immediately evicted the dwarves off of their land and claimed it for our own reasons. After improving my income with the second base, I took Arthas and a few knights to wreak havoc in the final enemy base. It proved effective, albeit rather slow to do. As although knights are very effective combat units due to their high health and armor values and ability to run down the squishier high value spellcasters, the issue is they have a relatively low damage number, so it took a little while to break through, but it proved very effective. We could also ignore the attacks of the enemy gargoyles, as they are low value when attacking ground units. Descension is the mission that answers the question, can you beat the human campaign using only humans? Because the answer is no, because of this friggin' mission. Arthas is the only human you have in this mission, and the rest of your army is composed of Muradin, a dwarf, and mercenaries that you hire, which are trolls, ogres, and goblins, none of which are humans last I checked. So, in the spirit of the challenge and trying to keep it going forwards, all I could do is run Arthas and Muradin to the objectives, with Arthas trying to tank majority of the hits to at least show the human spirit of this mission. When we get close to a ship, Muradin just knocks it over, and that's kind of the whole mission, really. At one point, we have to hire goblin sappers to get rid of trees, but yeah, as far as I can see and tell from every item in the shop, every little thing in the game, there is no ways to do this mission using effectively only Arthas. Finally, we are onto the last mission of the human campaign, named after the iconic weapon Frostmourne. The beginning of the mission is divided into two phases that you have to handle at the same time. In the one phase, you escort Arthas through a cave. Normally, getting through the cave is a trivial matter. However, when you are missing your dwarven rifleman, your damage output is severely neutered, which results in it taking substantially longer to get through. While escorting Arthas through the cave, you also have to keep your base alive at the same time. Luckily, to help you out, you are given a large number of troops to defend until Arthas comes back. Sadly, however, most of our troops are non-human, and because of that fact, we're going to have to get rid of them. Normally, I have been knocking them out before the mission starts. However, in this case, there was way too many of them to bother doing at once, so I decided to dismiss them from duty and send them on a lovely walk into the snow. To jump a little bit ahead in time, we'll look at the end of the cave section. I had taken a fair beating from the whole ordeal, because with less damage output, you tend to take more damage as the enemy survives longer. Also, without Muradin stunning everything, the enemy is a lot more active while they are fighting you. And finally, the last enemy has frost armor, which, as we established in an earlier mission, is quite a pain to deal with, because it just slows down the attack damage of all the melee troops to a crawl. We were able to finish battered, bruised, especially so for Muradin, and now we finally join up with our army, and we don't have to deal with two things at once, and we can focus solely on winning the campaign. And to win the campaign, I wanted to do it in the very stupid way I was somehow able to do as a child. And I'm just going to tell you now, that plan did not work out at all. Mostly due to the fact that I ran out of patience. The way I somehow did this as a very young child was I would run in with Arthas and Divine Shield. I would smack around as many buildings and workers as I possibly could, and I would run out. And I would rinse and repeat the process over and over and over again. But I think because Reforged plays a bit different from the original campaign, the enemy just seems to be able to recover a lot quicker than they did before. And due to that fact, Arthas, despite all his good items and his relatively high damage output due to the chaos damage he gained with Frostmourne, it was still taking too long. So I ended up just expanding to the natural base, building up a big enough army, and just slowly but surely trudging through the mission. And that was it for the campaign. So yes, you can beat the human campaign using humans only, which is a bit silly when you consider the fact that the faction is called humans and the majority of the troops are non-humans, but I digress. It should have been called Alliance as it was called in World of Warcraft, but we can't turn back time and just change that for Blizzard now, can we? But I want to thank everyone who stuck around this long to watch me play the game. I hope you had a bit of fun watching the challenge, maybe you picked up a new strategy or two, and if I get 20,000 views, I will do the Undead campaign as a follow-up. Thank you very much everyone, please like and subscribe, and until next time, peace out. This has been Cyphero on the Sage's page.